Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome back to Emory Climate Talks. My name is Eri Saikawa, and I'm an associate professor of environmental sciences at Emory University. COVID cases are increasing, and the new visa rule for foreign students is causing so much anxiety among many of us. I'm so glad that we are here to listen to change agents like Sandra Kwak and think about what we can do in these challenging times. This webinar series is made possible by our anonymous donor that supports our trip to the UN climate change negotiations, and Emory Climate Talks is in partnership with the Department of Environmental Sciences and the Resilience and Sustainability Collaboratory at Emory University. If you have not signed up yet, please do check out our website, climatetalks.emorydomains.org, and sign up for our newsletter. Also, please check out our YouTube channel and subscribe it. We're recording today's talk, as you heard, and so it will also be available on the YouTube channel in the next couple of days. We have muted your microphone, but if you have any questions during the talk, feel free to use the chat function to type up the questions so that we can raise them during the Q&A session. So today, I'm so excited to have Ms. Sandra Kwak, the CEO and founder of 10Power. 10Power is working on installing commercial-scale solar energy projects in Haiti in a way that works and sustainable. 10Power was named the 2019 Best in the World Environment B Corp, and it is committed to net zero emissions by 2030. Ms. Kwak is an Emory College alumna. She double majored in political science and visual arts. She went on to a Sustainable MBA from Presidio Graduate School in San Francisco, California. She previously worked at AutoGrid to create energy-saving apps for utilities using smart meter big data, and she co-founded and served as president and COO of energy efficiency company PowerZoa and a Pacific gas and electric utility implementing emissions offset program associated with electricity generation. She's also the co-founder of Infinite Humanity, an interactive story creation platform that you should check it out. And she's also a board member at the Foundation for Climate Restoration, working on solutions to bring the concentration of carbon in the atmosphere back down to 300 parts per million by 2050. And if that was not enough, she has taught race, activism, and climate justice at San Francisco State University and has given guest lectures at California College of the Arts and at Stanford as well. So she has been a change agent for such a long time, and I think we're having her at the right time when we really need to talk about race, activism, and climate justice. I'm sure she will tell us all about 10Power, her journey from Emory to 10Power, and then we will have plenty of time for discussions. So as I said, if you have any questions at any time, feel free to use the chat box, and I'll get to them during the Q&A. So with that, thank you so much, everybody, for joining. And thank you so much, especially Sandra, for joining us. And the Zoom floor is yours.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's exciting to be back at Emory, albeit virtually. And I'm super thrilled to share with y'all today. I'm going to start off my presentation here with something that we do at Extinction Rebellion, which is a land acknowledgement. And I am right here in San Francisco. Can you see my the presentation mode, or is it in the back end?
It's in the note mode.
Yeah, hold on. Let me unplug my external monitor real quick, and we'll share again. Great, this should work now. Is that working properly?
Yeah.
Excellent. And so currently I am in San Francisco, which is Ohlone Ramaytush land. And there's an amazing website called nativeland-ca. And I looked up where Atlanta is on native lands, and it looks like the Muskogee Creek tribes were located in the Atlanta area. And so I would like to acknowledge the people who lived for generations and generations on this land before us in a regenerative manner, and to hope that we can learn from them and to restore a regenerative relationship between humans and the earth. Thanks. So as Yuri mentioned, I graduated from Emory in 2004 poli-sci and art. And 2018, I won the Emory Entrepreneur Award in social impact, which is a great honor. Especially because Emory wasn't super into social impact when I went there. And so I've been really thrilled to see the increasing growth of programs academically and also extracurricularly at Emory. And I'm really excited to be talking about climate and to see so many students who are interested in the betterment of the world in our future. Right after I graduated, I was really into art activism. And I was doing a lot of photography, and we also started an underground arts nonprofit and published a free magazine called Deconform that did a lot of arts criticism and political arts analysis, and we were publishing that in the Atlanta area. And I was very lucky in 2006 to get involved on the board of the Bioneers Conference, and we actually helped produce the very first Bioneers Conference in the southeastern United States. And that was a big awakening for me, being in a room with so many like-minded people. It was shortly after Inconvenient Truth came out, and I had been aware of climate change since I was a little girl. And it was actually, there was an article in the Emory Alumni Magazine where I tell my formative story about how I arrived at the issue. And I was feeling at that point in my life like I was very far away from being able to actually do the work in the world that I was meant to do here. And feeling like I didn't have all of the skills that I needed to be able to start a renewable energy international business that was improving people's lives in a tangible way and reversing climate change. And I remember I had this moment where I just had almost a primal scream, and I was wanting to access a higher potential than I felt I had at that time. And so I started looking up sustainable MBA programs, and I found Presidio Graduate School here in San Francisco. Got rid of most of my stuff, rented a minivan, drove across the country, wound up here in the Bay Area. And during my time at Presidio, a student group in a products and services class actually designed this product called PowerZoa, which was to monitor and control electricity at an outlet level and stop vampire power. And we moved into the smart building space where we were doing energy efficiency control systems to save electricity. And we actually developed this product initially as a student group. And we got into the finals of the Walmart Sustainable Business Living Challenge business competition. And from there actually launched the company. And in the end, PowerZoa was a failed venture, and it was a huge learning for me. So we were a little ahead of the curve in terms of smart buildings. It wasn't really a word at that time. And we also, made some first-time entrepreneur mistakes. We had an extremely big team. We hadn't raised any money. We were working without any pay. And there are so many entrepreneurs out there who have a lot of failures before they have success. And so in Silicon Valley, the mantra is fail fast. And I'm really grateful for that experience because it taught me so much that I'm taking into my ventures in the future. And from there, I got recruited into AutoGrid, which, as Ari mentioned, is a big data company that is taking information from smart meters, all of this energy information that we're collecting on a 15-second basis, and using it to balance supply and demand on the grid in real time. So creating energy saving apps that provide residential demand response programs where we're trying to eliminate that peak of electricity. So if people can save energy during the hottest couple of hours of the year when all the ACs are running, and they can just turn off their air conditioners during that peak time, there are millions and millions, if not billions of dollars worth of savings to achieve across the grid, as well as avoiding dirty fossil fuel peaker plants, which are only turned on during those dirtiest times when we're using the absolute maximum capacity of electricity on the grid. So that was a really fun experience in terms of technology and growing a startup really quickly and being in Silicon Valley. The founder of AutoGrid, actually his previous company created 10 of the 12 microchips in the very first iPhone. So he had really been around the block in terms of Silicon Valley experience. And I was feeling at AutoGrid like it was pretty exciting that with the click of a mouse, we could save megabytes, if not gigawatts of electricity. And on the other hand, I was feeling like there was a social justice aspect of my work that was not quite being fulfilled. And I was feeling called to do something that was more directly working with people in the field, something with a gender empowerment lens where every individual can achieve their highest potential. and wanting to combine renewable energy technology with social justice and impacts. And that's what drove me to start 10Power. And simultaneously, while I was starting 10Power, I was also teaching at San Francisco State University, race, activism, and climate justice. And San Francisco State University is the first, if not only, university that has an ethnic studies major. And in the 1960s, when there was, on the heels of the civil rights movement, there were a lot of organizers at San Francisco State University and a lot of activity with Black Panthers and with people reclaiming their identity and realizing that a lot of academics were through just one lens, a very European lens. And people really started doing research around learning within the context of your personal history, and how when you learn about authors that come from your cultural and ethnic backgrounds, when you're reading about heroes that come from your communities, it makes academics a lot more applicable, and it also helps students to see their place in the world. And so it was really interesting for me from an academic perspective to see all of the incredible historic work that has happened around activism and racial justice at SFSU, and drawing out some of those concepts from the class that I was teaching and looking at the news right now. The intersectionality between race activism and climate justice is really undeniable. And COVID has illuminated a lot of the weaknesses in our system when it comes to racial injustice and environmental injustice and the intersection of those two. For example, Cancer Alley in Louisiana is one of the places with the highest cancer deaths because there's a stretch of highly polluting industries, of fossil fuel industries. And people not only have been dying of cancer there, but it also has one of the highest COVID-19 death rates in the country because people's immune systems have been compromised repeatedly over time. In the Navajo Nation, where we're seeing, some of the highest infection rates per capita, and a lot of these communities have not had access to electricity or running water. And so we're really seeing a lot of the injustices in terms of access to resources underscored by lack of access to healthcare systems and by increased vulnerability to the pandemic. And so I think it's crucially important that as we're coming out of this pandemic eventually, hopefully, that we'll be able to start building a better world now that the cracks in our system have been exposed and we've seen those vulnerabilities, and we're seeing with the Black Lives Matter movement that there is an opportunity for us to collectively take action and create change, to think about exactly what we want that world to look like. Because we're in an opening, we're in a window right now where it is so clear that the old system does not work. And it is really a time for us to be bold and summon our creativity to start to sketch out and scaffold what we want the new system to look like. In addition to 10Power, I've also been volunteering as an organizer with Extinction Rebellion. And Extinction Rebellion is a global direct action climate movement that was born in the UK about 2 years ago. And here with the San Francisco Bay chapter, we've been doing some really fun actions. We've taken it more digital since the pandemic, but pre-pandemic, we were doing stuff like absurdist street theater, where we're building a truth pipeline in front of Chase Bank, one of the largest funders of fossil fuels. And then we had a leak in the pipeline and all these animals and people died out in front of Chase Bank. And then the workers rose up to stop the pipeline. So we've been doing a lot of really, really fun kind of in your face street actions with Extinction Rebellion. And it's been, for me, a really healthy outlet for a lot of the grief that I feel around climate change and a lot of the reckoning that I think that our generation is needing to come to terms with in terms of where humanity is at a whole with our relationship with the ecosystem. And with that, I'll jump into 10Power. So 10Power is our B corporation. You can call it 10Power. And if you forget, just count your fingers. So that's our name. And the name came from this idea that each one person can teach 10 people. Just one person can inspire 10 people. It's not hard to inspire 10 people, right? Like, talk to your friends, have a dinner party, when we can, and host a Zoom call. it's not hard to inspire 10 people. And if you can inspire them to the point where they're inspired to inspire 10 more people, we can create positive change. It's just starting right here. We don't have to wait for leaders of corporations or our government to start to put policies in place. We can actually start change right here within our communities and grow it exponentially. And so I started 10Power with the goal of bringing renewable energy to people across the world who don't have access to electricity. And more specifically, how we do that is we project develop and we finance commercial scale renewable energy, as well as renewable energy storage projects in places that don't have electricity. So our first market is Haiti. And this picture right here is our very first installation actually that we did in Haiti a number of years ago on a water purification facility that is providing clean drinking water to surrounding communities and supporting over 600 micro enterprises that are majority women-led and selling clean water to their communities. And 10Power has been working in Haiti since 2015. We, in addition to providing project development and finance for solar projects, we also do all of our work with a gender empowerment lens. And so that starts with our team, with making sure that there's gender equity on our team. And our bigger goal is to see gender parity within the solar workplace in Haiti. And even in the US, it's pretty far from gender parity in the energy industry. And so, so what we're doing in Haiti is we've started a women's solar installer training program. And we have women solar installers come with us and gain field experience at every job that we do. And of course, we work with women and men in the community to create green jobs and to train on solar so that everyone from the local community is empowered, has agency over the projects, and can participate in the green economy that we're helping to build. Oops, I had that in there twice. So this is some footage of the world at night. You may have seen pictures like this or images like this. Some areas are brightly lit and other areas are in complete swaths of darkness. And when you think about the impact that electricity has on your life, you know, our ability right now to disseminate information to each other, to contact with the outside world, you know, charging up your cell phone, to the academic information that you achieve and have access to, but then even down to the most fundamental aspects of your life, basic healthcare, access to running water that's potable to drink. Electricity really has a fundamental impact on every single aspect of our lives. And here I have mapped out markets across the world that have high energy poverty. So the darker the red, the greater percentage of the population that lives in extreme poverty. And you can see Haiti here is the only red dot in the Americas, where around 70% of the population does not have access to electricity. And what's interesting about this map is that when you overlay solar generation potential over energy poverty, the places that have the highest solar generation potential are actually the places with the highest energy poverty. It's kind of the curse of colonialism, the curse of resources. When the earth was centrifuging, a lot of resources went close to the equator, and then those places were heavily exploited. And so today wound up with less resources. And what's super unfair is that the communities that have contributed the least to climate change, that have benefited the least from the exploitation of fossil fuels, are those now being hit the hardest by the frontline impacts of climate change. So we not only have a massive opportunity for social justice, empowerment, and reversing the wrongs of the past, but there's also a business opportunity here too. You know, over the past decade, previously it was believed that there were not viable business models at the base of the economic pyramid. And many businesses, you know, starting with Mohammed Yunus and Grameen Bank, have proven that there is a massive market, and through opportunities like microfinance, it's possible for people to have improvements in quality of life and to participate in global economic systems. Now, Haiti, in addition to being one of the places on earth with the highest energy poverty, is also incredibly vulnerable to COVID-19. And so part of the pivot of our focus throughout the pandemic has been to laser point our energy onto creating access to reliable electricity for healthcare facilities. So throughout the pandemic, we've been focused on providing energy storage to hospitals. We actually just last week submitted a bid to UN operations. This is a $5.5 million bid for 4 major hospitals in Haiti that are receiving ventilators to combat the COVID-19 crisis. And it's really, I think it's an important time for entrepreneurs to be very nimble, which is what we do. You know, we figure out if something's not working, you quickly pivot, and it's one of the advantages to being a small business. And so I think that there are opportunities for all entrepreneurs in this moment to pivot their business models to see how we can best support you know, those communities that need it the most in this moment. Now, the business case in Haiti, you know, all year round, all the time, is very clear for solar. Haiti, like most of the Caribbean and many island nations, is reliant on imported diesel generators and imported diesel gasoline. So, so these diesel generators cost a ton of money because you're constantly having to operate, maintain them, do repairs, feed them diesel, and they result in really deadly emissions, not only CO2 contributing to global warming, but also SOx and NOx, which have impacts on lung health and are linked to cancer. So, so it's important to get these businesses not only for their economic benefit off of dirty diesel generators, but also for health benefits to the community. And our purpose at 10Power is triple bottom line. So we're people, profit, planet. We look, of course, at the money that our customers will save, but we also look at critical services like clean water, health, sustainable agriculture, job creation and access to markets, education. We have a number of educational facilities in our customer pipeline, and gender empowerment with every project that we do. Our business model itself is threefold. So we provide project development, which is namely the implementation of international codes and standards. So we provide engineering oversight. We make sure that we have crews that are following international guidelines, and that we're providing a lot of oversight on projects. We also source finance for projects. So this has been a big barrier in most of the markets that lack access to electricity. You know, there's tons of sun. It's obvious that solar is a better choice than diesel, but nobody, even a multi-million-dollar business, has that cash on hand to take that money out of operations and invest 100% upfront in solar. The way that most people have solar here in the United States is they oftentimes pay zero upfront, and it just gets financed into their utility bill, and they can pay it back through their savings that they achieve on their utility bill. So finance is really a big missing piece in these markets, and that's one piece that we bring to the table. And then our third pillar is our focus on local ecosystems and training women and men in the community. Now, one of our first flagship projects was UNICEF Haiti's headquarters. We put 130 kilowatts of solar on UNICEF Haiti's headquarters, as well as 244 kilowatt hours of energy storage. And this project, at its time of completion, was the largest solar installation on any UNICEF base in the entire world. So we were really proud that this was happening in Haiti. And this speaks to my philosophy of fourth world development, which I'll get to a little bit later in the presentation. But I really think that innovations can happen on the front lines in emerging economies, and that those innovations can be transferred back to places like the global north. And here's a little bit of drone footage of our installation on UNICEF Haiti's headquarters. They have a 3-building campus. This is in downtown Port-au-Prince. And so we worked closely with UNICEF. It took about a year and a half to get through all of the bureaucratic paperwork and hoops and everything to get this project underway. We're really, really glad that that project is continuing to provide power to them. A project that we just finished recently, actually mid-swing with the pandemic, we were able to continue the project and finish it, is a solar-powered water desalination system that we worked on in conjunction with Give Power, which is the NGO of SolarCity and Tesla. And in Give Power provided solar-powered desalination, or they provided the desalination equipment and water tanks, and 10Power constructed the canopy with the solar equipment and hooked it all up. And Haiti is basically shaped like this, like a mouth. And this was on the island of La Gonave, which is right in the mouth of Haiti. And it's a gorgeous island. They have had a lot of population growth. They had enough clean water for about 10,000 people, and there's about 50,000 people living on the island. And so this water desal plant is producing enough clean drinking water for up to 40,000 people at a below market rate. And it's a pay-as-you-go system, so people can come and tap up with their little cards, and it keeps track. They pay a lower rate than it would cost for them to drink bottled water that's imported. And then the revenue from that water goes to community members who are running the plant. So this is important, that there's a self-sustaining revenue model to make sure that there's ongoing operations and maintenance so that the plant doesn't fall into disarray. And here's a little bit of drone footage of the Lago Nav project in process. So we basically built this from the ground up, poured out concrete pad, and we built a number of buildings for the various equipment, the bottling, for people to come and get the water from the smart taps. And this was another project that we had our women solar installer students participating with. Great. Okay, here we go. So we partnered with one of the leading technical institutions in Haiti called Haiti Tech. And they have a program that is sponsored by the Solar Electric Light Fund internationally, where they're training women and men from the community on solar installations. So we're working with their students to provide them field experience, hands-on. And so with this installation, we were able to provide training experience for 3 of the women solar installers. And we're really glad they're succeeding in the marketplace. They've gotten some additional jobs with solar companies in Haiti. And we're hoping to continue to grow this program. We received for the Lago Nav installation a small grant from another organization called Unitaire, which is based out of Quebec, to support this training program. And so that's definitely an ongoing objective for us. And capacity building obviously is very important. So making sure that all of our team members have PPE for solar. So we've always had OSHA equipment, and so we've of course expanded that to PPE for medical as well, and making sure that everyone is up to date on the best practices and codes and standards. And then another component of our work that is appealing to international agencies like the UN, and of course is very important to us, is working in line with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, or global goals. And the key goals that we're focused on are number 1, no poverty; number 5, gender equality; number 7, renewable energy; and number 13, climate action now. And just a little sneak peek at some of the projects that we have coming up. We are working right now on a renewable energy project spec for Jesquio Hospital, which has been established since 1983. They were originally built to address HIV in the LATAM Caribbean region, and they brought HIV infection rates down significantly during that time. They were also working on TB and then cardiovascular health, which is one of the largest killers in Haiti, and now they're managing the COVID-19 response for Haiti. And so we're honored to be working with them to help them with their energy needs. And another project that we have in our upcoming pipeline is the AHDH Haitian run medical clinic in Jacmel, Haiti, a beautiful beachside community in the south, which is supported by diaspora Haitian residents in New Orleans. And it's beautiful seeing this collaboration with the local community and Haitians living abroad. And we're excited to be helping them with their energy needs as well. Now, quickly, I'll get a little bit into the philosophy that drives 10Power. And our overarching goal is not only to help the immediate businesses and individuals that we serve, but also to help on a macroeconomic level. Haiti has been importing diesel at a loss to their GDP for some time. And with the collapse of Venezuela's economy a few years ago, the Haitian government actually took on this fuel subsidy. And just starting actually today or yesterday, there are again diesel shortages in the country that are leading to massive instability, both economically and politically. So helping the country get off of diesel and to get onto a local resource, the sun that shines on Haiti, will help the macroeconomy overall, as well as the community and the constituents that we serve. And this is all part of my theory of #4th world development, which is the idea that we are actually moving backwards with development. So people all over the world want a better life for themselves, and they want their children to have a better life than they did. You know, but with 7 billion humans on the planet, if every single person in the world had the same consumption footprint as a US citizen, it would require 5 planet Earths or more. So this is clearly an issue because there's only one planet Earth and there's no planet B. So what do we do about this? Well, my idea is that we've actually created this false paradigm that everybody should aspire to be first world, right? That first is the best. Because if you're supposed to go from third world to first world, where do you go after first world? 0th world? -1 world, right? I think development is going backwards. And what we actually should be doing is going forward, like tech. To go 3.0, 4.0, 5.0, right? The first iPhone wasn't the best. The first Mac wasn't the best. It's buggy, it's a prototype, right? We should actually be constantly evolving and moving forward and harvesting innovations and improving the product that is humanity. So my idea of fourth world innovation also was touched upon in a World Economic Forum paper that mentions a lot of different aspects of development that can help us have more insights into our collective evolution, such as big data informatics, you know, completely understanding the inputs and outputs of our natural systems on our world and how we are impacting our natural worlds and each other. I imagine renewable energy 100% for 100% of humanity, and net zero energy buildings. So what if we lived in buildings that generated more oxygen than we breathe, that grew more food than we consume, you know, that generated more electricity than we use? This stuff is not sci-fi. It already exists. All the technology exists. It's pretty much just our mental barriers that are preventing us from getting there. And also leveraging traditional ecological knowledge. So the knowledge of our tribal ancestors and indigenous grandmothers. You know, there's amazing knowledge from generations before us that have lived with the land, and having that knowledge combined with modern technology, I think will help us to advance into the future. I see a lot of opportunity for technology transfer that's happening on the front lines right now of places that are being impacted the hardest by climate change, and that we will be able to take those innovations to the rest of the world as we're seeing the increasing impacts of climate change in communities across the globe. So spread the meme if you're feeling it. And with that, let's open up the floor for questions.
Great, thank you so much. I would like to give a round of applause for everybody because not everybody's muted, but that was great. So now there's questions are coming in, so please type them up. I will go with the first one that came in. So David asks, great Sandra, will the predicted increase in hurricanes and tropical storms impact the solar installations in Haiti?
Absolutely, and as we saw in Puerto Rico, you know, when you have a grid that's centralized, it's very fragile and brittle. And the grid in Puerto Rico was very easily taken out by Hurricane Maria. Whereas if you have distributed solar installations and microgrids, it's more difficult to take out a large swath of the grid, because if they're distributed throughout a geographic area, hurricanes are usually concentrated in a specific area. There was a great paper that came out by the Rocky Mountain Institute on solar resilience. And so they did a study of solar installations in the Caribbean region that had been destroyed by hurricanes and that had survived hurricanes. And so they looked at racking techniques, they looked at mounting techniques, and different pieces of equipment that claim that they can survive Category 5 winds. And so they did a wonderful scientific analysis of which equipment actually is hurricane proof. And so there's been a lot of great learnings there. The most expensive portion of our solar installations is the batteries. And so usually the batteries will be in a protected area inside of a concrete building, a bunker, a shipping container. And so while some solar panels could be damaged from flying debris, the bulk of the cost of the installation is in the batteries and inverters, which are housed in a more protected area. But there definitely is both risk as well as opportunity for increased resilience with hurricanes.
The next question from Lois, what did the process look like for 10Power to ensure the relevancy and reliability of the technology that it introduced to the Haitian community? How does 10Power's definition of sustainability apply to the Haitian government?
Yeah, we definitely work with bankable, vetted suppliers. So it's very important to us that the technology that we use has been used in other places across the world, that it's warranted, and that it's a very reputable, long-standing supplier that we have a good relationship with. I have heard stories of really cheap or under spec or not to spec equipment being dumped in markets like Haiti. And so for us, it's incredibly important, especially as we're financing these installations, and also just from an ethical perspective, that they're longstanding, that they're going to perform as rated. And so we have relationships with many major suppliers of solar equipment. We test out the equipment before we install it, and we make sure that the suppliers have signed off, that oftentimes we'll send somebody from the company to help commission the equipment, and make sure all the T's are crossed and all the I's are dotted to ensure that the warranties are callable. Now, in terms of sustainability and the Haitian government, we are thrilled to be working with the World Bank and the Haitian government. There's an energy cell called MTPTC within the Haitian government that has issued a number of bids for microgrids across Haiti. So there's some funding available. Some of that funding has been reallocated for the COVID response, but we're in close communication with those entities, and we are excited to be helping to grow the renewable energy market in Haiti. The Haitian government recognizes that it is definitely a drain on GDP having a lot of imported diesel. Needless to say, there are a lot of economic interests that are tied up in the diesel industry. So there are definitely some really big players that don't want to be disrupted in terms of that field. So it's a tenuous dance, you know, helping to build a solar economy that could potentially disrupt some giants. But I think that there are at least very forward-looking members within the Haitian government who are excited about helping the solar industry in the country to grow.
Okay, I will change the order a little bit and then go to Ambika's question first. She says, I have heard that investors are reluctant to supply loans for clean energy projects in developing countries. This can make solar more expensive in these countries. Is there a reliable way to secure funding or increase investor confidence?
You know, funding is always one of the biggest issues, especially for social impact organizations, and especially in frontier and emerging markets. And our route so far has been to raise capital from impact investors. So we've raised from individual impact investors. We've raised from 2 impact funds. One is called the Lift Economy Force for Good Fund. And the other is a group called SHEEO of Women Investing in Women internationally. And we're looking at the next phase, you know, given that this isn't really the type of company that a VC, like a standard venture capitalist, would invest in, because they want to see, oh, it's the app that's going to have 10x growth in the next 3 years, right? Like we're not in it for those reasons. So we've been looking at international development banks and saying, you know, this is really the job of international development banks. How did we get reliable electricity grids here in the United States? It was with the original New Deal. We had long-term 50-year 1% bonds, right? Like we had long-term financing at a very low interest rate that was backed by the government, and there is not that type of capital available. I mean, exactly as Ambika is saying, that cost of capital is not available for emerging markets because of the risk premium that's associated with it. And so part of my messaging to impact investors is, instead of pushing a risk premium onto the interest rate that you're charging, why don't you look at the risk premium that's coming back to you as the social and environmental impact? So if you would accept a market rate return for what a bond would look like in the United States, you know, if you would accept a lower market rate return, accept the social impact as that extra reward that's coming back to you, instead of expecting an extra financial reward. Now, one way that we are dealing with this mismatching of capital in the marketplace right now is that we are launching a donor advised fund, which is actually philanthropy's big dirty secret. Basically, there's tons of money. There's hundreds of billions of dollars in donor advised funds that that basically never have to go to charity. So if there is a person who's going to make a ton of money one year and they're going to have a giant tax liability, this their financial advisor may recommend to them, oh, just create a donor advised fund and it'll be like a personal philanthropy. But you don't actually have to assign where that money goes for 10 years. So the brokerage may be taking that money and just reinvesting it in Wall Street and making interest for the brokerage. Meanwhile, the philanthropist has forgotten that they have that money in the account because they already got their tax write-off for that year. And so the money is actually being invested in perpetuating the problems that they got the tax write-off because they're supposed to be solving. And so we have found that there's this market instrument that's out there, the Donor Advised Fund, and we're actually launching a renewable energy access donor advised fund where people can donate money, get a tax write-off, but that money immediately goes towards underwriting renewable energy projects. And so we can create a cushion. So if something goes wrong in Haiti, if there's a natural disaster, if there's a coup, an earthquake, we are able to cover a portion of those loans using the donor advised fund. And that won't have an impact on the other investors. So that's one avenue. And it's always, you know, as an impact entrepreneur, you're always trying to find a new avenue because the world is not set up for us to succeed yet. So we got to keep carving our own way and also helping others to find that way.
So Joel asks, can you talk more about your experience initially connecting art and activism?
Oh, I love art and activism. So it's just something that brings me a lot of joy. I think that art opens people's hearts and minds in a different way than science or facts or billboards or megaphones. You know, when you're criticizing something, when you're yelling at somebody or you're trying to prove a point, then their brain automatically goes into analytical mode and they're trying to see, oh, do I agree with them or do I disagree with them, right? It's like this binary system. Whereas if you create a mural and somebody's like, oh, look at those colors, huh? Oh, that's cool. What is that image trying to tell me? You know, and they're trying to decipher it. They're curious. Or if they hear a song and they hear some harmonies, right? Then they're like, oh, what's that noise? And then it's a different way, a softer way of delivering a message and maybe entering into the psyche and the consciousness, you know, that is not something that is so confrontational that it'll immediately be rejected. So I think we have a lot of opportunity right now to create new cultural myths and norms. And, you know, basically everything that governs our lives as humans right now is fiction. Right, we've strayed so far away from the biological reasons that we do things. You know, like we have our food, or our shelter, our safety, or a lot of us do in the world, and many of the things that we use, like money, you know, our cultural institutions, our norms, are just fictions that other humans have created, and I find that quite empowering. You know, if it's possible for within a couple of 100 years to create, you know, a new religion that actually takes over the world, you know, a couple of 1,000 years to create these new institutions, why not start making up the new cultural norms that we want to exist with? You know, it's been 450 years since slavery started. You know, 450 years from now, you know, what things will we begin today that will influence generations to come in a really profound and empowering way? That's where the art comes in.
Okay, so the next question, Lisa's, maybe this is not a focus of 10Power, but have you looked into solar-powered stoves and or micro solar panels for household energy use? You can see the deforestation line for cooking fuel that delineates Haiti from Dominican Republic.
Yeah, there's been a lot of Haitian-led environmental initiatives to reforest a lot of Haiti, and there are also mountains between Haiti and the DR, and so there is some amount of wind shadow. That's an often quoted photo that the National Geographic published And I do know some Haitian environmental activists who would like to move away from that trope that's been spread a lot. However, it's definitely true that when there is extreme drought in Haiti, that farmers will chop down trees to create biochar or to just create charcoal and sell it instead of to eat in order to buy food to prevent famine and starvation. And so it's definitely important. Clean cook stoves have a massive impact on health, especially of women and girls. It's not 10Power's direct focus, as you mentioned, but we have talked with a lot of wonderful Haitian entrepreneurs that are working on these issues. And one barrier to clean cook stoves internationally has been cultural. So think about if somebody came in, like my grandma was a great cook. If somebody came in with like some crazy, weird stove contraption and was like, you're not doing this right. Like you need to stop cooking with your oven and use this thing instead. She'd be like, who are you? Get out of my kitchen. So I think that, there are these incredible stove technologies, but if it doesn't become a culturally accepted norm, cooking is so close to, the hearth and like what makes a home, that I think it's really important that initiatives be community led. And there's this great guy named Duquesne Svednard. He's a Haitian educator. He runs a university called Setemo in Haiti. And he also, out of the university, they're running a clean cook stove program called Eco Plop Plop. And they also manufacture the briquettes that go into the cook stoves. And they have a whole distribution network throughout Haiti. And I'm a big supporter of his work.
That's great. I actually had a question about the diesel generators that you mentioned. So as you said, they're so polluting. They have so much black carbon that come out. I was wondering, after your installation, were you able to figure out how much emissions have reduced because of that? Was there any data on that?
Yeah, we absolutely collect information about the reduction of diesel emissions. So we'll do a projection initially as we're beginning the project, and then we'll collect ongoing information about the reduction of emissions throughout the project's life cycle. And then it's also important for communications, not just to talk about pounds or metric tons of CO2, but also to break it out into CO2 equivalents, numbers of cars taken off the road, or numbers of seedlings planted and grown for 10 years. And so we'll create a lot of those corollaries for the customers to understand the information. Oftentimes, we will still use a little bit of diesel. So if it doesn't make sense for, let's say there's a piece of equipment that only gets used once a month, right? And it uses a tremendous amount of electricity. It doesn't make sense from a cost perspective to have solar and batteries for that spike usage if it's happening really infrequently. And so we'll recommend that the customer keeps a diesel generator for that moment in time. There are also situations where customers are incredibly cost sensitive, and given that batteries still cost a lot more upfront, we sometimes will recommend, if they have a low night usage, to use solar in the day when the sun is up, and then to continue using their diesel generator at night. And so in all of those cases, it's important to have a long-term phase-in plan for solar and energy storage. Help them with what they can afford right now, meet them where they're at, and then help them to move along that spectrum towards 100% renewable energy, and then also to keep close tabs on the amount that they're spending and the amount of reduced expenditures that they have on operations, maintenance, and the diesel itself. And diesel generator O&M, operations and maintenance, is based on runtime hours. So the fewer runtime hours that you have in your generator, then the less maintenance it requires, and also the less super icky fumes that it's going to be spraying into the air.
Yeah, that's great. And it seems like there's so much opportunity now, combining art and then activism and all that you do together to really, create the positive energy that we need for the world. I was wondering, how could students be involved in your work that you do? Is there anything that the students should be mindful of? Is there some skill set that they should be trying to achieve if they would like to be like you?
Well, yeah, I say just go for your dreams, in whatever field that you're interested in. Start trying to get, knowledgeable about that field, and reach out to companies to see if you can get an internship in that field. we had an amazing intern who worked with us for a year after graduating Emory, and he wants to start his own solar company, and so he was working with us and kind of out there learning the ropes with us, and he just got into grad school. I wrote a recommendation for him. We have a marketing intern from Emory right now over the summer, and we have an amazing group of interns right now who are all super passionate about climate. And be brave, be bold, you know? And like one of my advisors told me, I was first trying to raise capital and I was like, oh, this is so hard. Nobody wants to invest in these markets and nobody cares. He's like, go out and get me 100 no's, 100 no's. He's like, I bet you'll get one yes before you get 100 no's. So don't be afraid of hearing no, you know, like go for it. The no is a gift. Like go out there and just throw yourself into whatever you're passionate about. And, you know, before you get to 100 no's, you're gonna hit the yeses. You're gonna be successful.
That is such a powerful idea. I think there is so much that we need to think about before, you know, we do get very worried about getting a no. And then thinking like that there is one yes in 100 no's, that makes us so much more powerful. So thank you so much for that. And then there's people thanking you for your response, your enthusiasm. It was really inspiring. And then I think we learned so much from what you do and then hearing directly from you. So thank you so much. And thank you everybody for the great discussions and questions. If you have any last minute questions, please type them up before the time is over. And I also want to thank Leah Thomas, who has been sending a lot of different information sources and then doing all the work behind us. And then I also wanted to let you know about the next week's seminar. So we will have another alumna, Mandy Mahoney from Southeast Energy Efficiency Alliance. Next week is going to be Wednesday at 3 p.m. EDT again. So I hope you will be able to join us. So I see everybody saying thank you, but I don't see any more questions. So with that, thank you so much, Sandra, again for joining us. And stay safe, everybody. Hopefully see you next week again.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.